He has been trained as a mediator in training session organized by the Mediation Committee of the Bombay High Court and IMC in the year 2013. He was editor of yearly publication brought out by WIRC of ICAI on Finance Bill Analytical Review for the year 2004, 2005, 2006. He was an editor of our Income Tax Review also for the year 2001-2. He has presented papers all across India on various study circles, various seminars, conferences, all across India on various forums, BCA, WRC, Chamber, everywhere. He was associated as a member of the Managing Committee of the Chamber of Income Tax Consultants for the year 1-2. He was also a member of Executive Committee of All India Federation of Tax Practitioners for the year 2002. His area of specialization is basically as a practicing as a chartered accountant in individual field, in the fields of arbitration and also appellate practice and settlement commission. With these few and very minimum words, I present before you Shri Chetan Karya. I request all of you to welcome him to the lecture. I would request Paras Bhai to offer a memento to Shri Chetan Bhai as a mark of our love and respect. I would request Chetan Bhai to address us.
Dear friends, Paras, Ketan, Dinesh, I see a lot of friends across also. If you look at what they have given as a program schedule for the whole day, you all are chartered accountants. I don't know whether you have ever experienced, but many words which are peculiar to our profession are very difficult to explain to people who are not in the profession, even if they are not in tax practice. And if you give this to your dad who is in business or is a salaried employee, you will read this law of evidence, okay, the first subject. Second is current common issues faced in assessment and reassessment. Third is do's and don'ts in assessment and reassessment. So really covered the whole thing about assessment. Now, is there a statutory settlement also? So, this is a common thing that I face whenever anybody in social function where I'm meeting non-tax people, non-professionals, and if somebody just says that he appears often in settlement commission, and the first question is, oh, as if, okay, I'm doing that type of work. It gives an image, you look at the structure, it gives an image that, okay, first he has not worked, so now really you need that settlement to get the assessment through. Well, friends, this is the statutory mechanism, we all are aware. Settlement commission is different than the settlement term that we understand. And therefore, many times I try to say, let us use the word, Hindi word for the same very institution, that is Samjhota Ayog. Much better than settlement, though it's also not a very great term, but Samjhota is at least sounding better than settlement commission. Now, what is settlement commission? What is Samjhota Ayog? We have went through the process of assessment throughout the day. The crucial part, if you remember the first session, which Mr. Gopal handled, was evidence. That is, rules of evidence. That is one thing, that is what is right and wrong. But in any forum, judicial forum, quasi-judicial forum of income tax also, what is a fact has to be proved. That is, it has to be brought on record. A simple thing like, you go to airport, just to explain what we mean by rules of evidence. You go to airport, you remain Chetan Karya, but you still at the gate are asked, along with the ticket, a photo ID. That is an evidence that you are Chetan Karya, a photo ID. So the CMA rules of evidence, you must remember, you must have gone through in the morning, are crucial in assessment proceedings. So Samjhota Ayog, if you are thinking of, will go through. But the first and the foremost thing to remember is, it will not work. You cannot take those stands in Samjhota Ayog. First crucial thing, this is where, I found many times people fail, we'll touch this again and again and again. But one thing doesn't work, cannot be taken in Samjhota Ayog, why we'll go through. Now really, what is Samjhota Ayog, why it came up? You all must be remembering we had 7-8 VDI schemes, voluntary disclosure of income. That is, when there is a tax regime where people evade taxes. Over a period of time, you find black money. This is going on since the new government came up. Black money is becoming a big issue again. But really, what do you do with black money? One is what is going on right now, that everybody feels that I will be able to solve this problem. Today, you look at it anywhere in the country, every person who has little bit authority is of the view that I can solve this problem of black money, just give me the authority, I will do it. This is how the whole concept of black money, how to bring it to an account system. So we had over a period of time voluntary disclosure scheme. Once one thought was given, and that was a commission was set up in 1976, Vanchu Committee. They said instead of voluntary disclosure schemes, there should be a permanent mechanism where a tax evading taxpayer, a citizen of country, can come and say, okay, I have heard, but now I want to look forward. This is like presidential power for people who have got death penalty. But okay, he's been proven that he has done the offense. Courts have already given him death penalty. Highest court have also affirmed it. Now, what does the president do? President doesn't evaluate the evidences. President looks at it. Is it worth putting him to death, or is it worth giving him that concession and let him live with certain conditions? So this is a presidential pardon. Every king, whether he is a democratic or otherwise, always needs power of pardon. Because if you are going to say hang everybody, you are going to find that there is nobody left. So presidential pardon was brought in. This concept is there in the committee's report, that there has to be some mechanism whereby a tax evading citizen can come forward and say, okay, I have heard, henceforth nothing will happen, this is what the taxes I have to pay, please give me immunities and penalties and prosecution. So this is a forum where they are going to give immunities to a person who is a tax evader. And that is there in the first clause of these provisions. When one looks at section 245C1, it says that an application can be filed. It clearly says the condition that you can file an application for settlement offering income not known to the assessing officer. A person who has not concealed cannot come to settlement commission. It is to a certain extent, I would say, a criminal reform system. If one use the word loosely criminal, because that is what the mentality is, that a black money, a tax evader is a criminal. So it's a criminal reform system. Ultimately, a tax evader has contributed to your economy. He is a citizen of this country, maybe outside also, but he still contributes to your economy. Are you going to kill an economic asset, or are you going to let that economic asset survive by teaching him a lesson that okay, this much and no further, we are going to do this. So this is what the great concept is beyond Samjhauta. This is what was the thought process. This is what the thought process is. As always happens, what is thought of and what is implemented is totally different. But yes, this is the great idea with which this was formed, Samjhauta Ayog, that you are going to have people, you are going to have a mechanism whereby tax evaders are given one chance to improve themselves, pay the taxes and do this. Now, who are these tax evaders? Little bit I would like to elaborate, because nowadays we find that you read in newspapers, no offense meant to any authority. This is my view, not necessarily I'm always right, but what I have gained in 25 years of practice working with people who have been searched, people who are going to settlement commission, there are three types. I have worked out three types of tax evaders. A tax evader per se, who just doesn't like to pay taxes and therefore he tries to minimize his income to the maximum extent possible. An evader hardcore, one would say they are in the range of total population of taxpayers in the range of 25 to 35%, but not more than 35%. Who are the seconder? And that is the people who are suffering the demand side of tax evasion. What is demand side of tax evasion? You are a developer. You say, suppose I want to do a business full white. There are going to be purchasers who are going to say, because of stamp duty, I am not going to buy 100 rupees white. This is a problem that government is aware of. This is a problem dealt with by Supreme Court 3 years back in Suraj Lamb's case. They gave guidelines. They made each state, it was a pill, something like a pill. They called each state to make a representation and told them that please take care of your stamp duty and all those taxes. Today, a transaction of immoral property, we talk of country being in 10 years, we are going to make it into a country where everybody has a house. Just ask yourself, how many taxes do we levy on them? A transaction of immovable property, service tax, VAT, stamp duty, registration. And this is each transaction. That is, you do a transaction today, 6 months down the line, you feel, no, I don't want this house, I'm going to go a better house, you again pay those 4. See, if this is the taxes that you have, there is always going to be a demand, from the person who has to pay these taxes, that is a flat purchaser. He is going to say sorry. You look at, there are umpteen number of businesses in this country waiting for GST to roll out, because today there is nobody who is ready to supply material by check, by bills. You ask your clients, few of them, I can immediately say without contradiction, are artificial jewelry. You say hosiery. Various other products are there which are not available by check. If you are a person who goes to purchase in a particular area in South India or North India, and by mistake if that businessman says that I want to buy by check, they will think he's a government officer and not supply him at all. This is a fact without exaggeration. Names can be taken, but then people will say, I'm taking names. So this is what we know. Government also knows. These are areas where you cannot say I'm going to pay by check. You want material, you have a mall, you have a shopping, buy it, but you will have to buy it by cash. Now how is that poor purchaser going to make the payment by check? He has to do something. So the demand side of number 2 is higher. These are the 65% of people who are suffering. We have last year bogus purchase scam 2 years back. Maharashtra government came up. Central government also said, I think the figure was 5,000 crores at the end. One question, small question to the government, to the IT department. Where is that 5,000 crores? If you detect undisclosed income of 5,000 crores, then you should be finding those assets also, no? Where is that asset? Last year's report you see every year the investigation wing gives out a report that this is by search and survey we detected so much unaccounted income. You look at those figures, what they give the figures both, detected income and detected assets. Assets are never more than 5 to 10%. Where are those assets which went away? They went to people whom they never want to touch. They are the politicians and the bureaucrats. They know where that money has gone. They will want to tax the businessman who has paid this money, but they will never want to go to him. They know the names, they know everything. Last year, 3 years at least in Bombay, in Maharashtra when they carried out search, they have clear-cut found papers writing the names of the bureaucrat or the minister who has taken money. What did the government do? Most probably, the investigation wing officers are wiser. They know that they have to report this, so they don't seize those papers. They will tell that client, please take this away, make some new paper, we can't take this. Because if he takes this, his bosses will be not pleased with him. So question is, when you look at tax evaders, don't look at it as what is the general scenario in this country today, that a tax evader is somebody who is spoiling your country. If you look at the tax evaders that come up in settlement commission, they are confidential names, anyway I will not share, you will be surprised. They are the biggest infrastructure builders, they are the biggest asset builders of this country. But they are there because the demand side. They have to do something about it. A corporate, where will it get money to bribe? And if you don't bribe, you can't survive in this country, that's the truth. And therefore, there is going to be always a third side of person who is a tax evader not by choice, tax evader because he does business in India. This is a reality. And these are the people who really deserve this Samjhota Ayog. So when you look at, many times I have seen people saying tax evaders, imagine, what is going on in newspapers, you feel, they are worse than Abu Saleh. Because Abu Saleh, when he was brought from Portuguese, there was certain terms. Portuguese has a law that nobody can be hanged. So they gave Abu Saleh with a condition that not only you will not kill him, but also you will not charge him with an offense which can lead to death penalty. Supreme Court said, yes, you cannot charge him for that. That is a treaty, international treaty, you are going to follow it. Who is Abu Saleh? Is he somebody we need to garland him? What do they do when it comes to treaty, DTSS? They say, no, we are going to change those treaties. This is the impression that is carrying on today in this country, that a tax evader is worse than Abu Saleh. This is a situation all of us are suffering, and that is what we need to change. We look at it the higher side. That these are people who will survive, who will do business this way. So So now what is Samjhauta Ayog for the people of this type? There are a very large number of people who are having these problems. We were discussing informally also. Most people who are today going to settlement commission are people who are suffering the demand side of number 2 money. How do we take it forward from there? There was a little diversion, but I feel nowadays, I take it a point that there is an impression in this country that tax evaders, as called as a class, are bad people. Tax evasion is bad, but what is called as a class of tax evaders is a much wider body. They are not tax evaders. It's just that they are brushed as tax evaders. Now, settlement commission, what are the provisions? What are the benefits to the department? We'll now go to the provisions. What are the benefits to the department? Settlement commission has 3 major benefits to the department that they realize only after they lose the appeal in tribunal. In settlement commission, it is a one-way street. The SSC files an application, and the main condition is that the SSC is going to make a full and true disclosure of its income. And therefore, SSC cannot say that you prove something. I have done this is a loan, I have filed a confirmation, now you have to prove it. No, sorry. He has to say the fact. So if the settlement commission is not satisfied, and that is what is major metals, is not satisfied of making a full and true disclosure, they will go ahead and add it. They did not have proof for that. And therefore, benefit to the department, first and foremost, they need not prove anything now. It is now the SSC who has to say a full and true, and they have to just come up with, these are the reasons we feel he is not making a full and true disclosure. A major departure. So the benefit for the department, rules of evidence don't apply. Second, because you have filed an application suo moto, you cannot go there and then say, sir, notice was not served, the assessment proceedings are time barred, or this has happened, or jurisdictional issues. None of those survive in settlement commission, because that is the basis on which you have gone there. Having gone there, you cannot take the jurisdiction issue. These 2 things are the crucial things which affects department's collection of revenue in such cases. You look at quite a few, I'm not saying they always say, for quite a few cases, SSCs have gone away just on the ground that you could not have reopened my assessment for this year, or this year you have issued 143(2) notice 2 days late, or you have not produced that person for cross-examination and therefore case is not proved. These are the grounds on which the department loses. In settlement commission, they have nothing of this sort to do. They have to just look at the application of the department and see whether he has made a full and true disclosure. It's a very big benefit to the department, but it rarely realizes this benefit. It always feels that no, the common refrain. There are a few judgments of Supreme Court also which says that settlement commission is a forum for tax dodgers. Well, it's a criminal reform system, so there will be tax dodgers only here. There cannot be honest taxpayers in settlement commission. I'll just give a few examples where settlement commission did not admit a case and what had happened. The classic case of Harshad Mehta was not admitted. Very genuine reasons, I'm not criticizing, but department was very clear this case cannot be admitted. A few years down the line, after all the demands are raised, they find there are no assets, there are banks which are claiming the same money which the income tax department is claiming. It's an informal, there is no order of High Court, but it's an informal comment of a judge of the High Court 10 years down. Then why is this case not in settlement commission? Department should have settled this and ended the matter. Why are you litigating? There are so many appeals going on, recoveries are doubtful. The case ought to have been settled. So the council got up and said, sir, the case got rejected. So this is what happens. Department realizes 10 years down the line that, oh, this case ought to have been settled because it's easier to get the money within 18 months, not even 18 months. You get the money along with the filing of application itself when we come to the procedure. So department has its advantages, but it has its own things. What has happened? Settlement commission has seen good days, bad days. I mean to say in what sense? Well, we had 1976 to 1991. This all is there in the note. You did not note it down. The government had formed the commission with a veto power to the commissioner. If the commissioner says that this application we have proved concealment, application could not be admitted. They found 76 to 91 nothing is happening because every commissioner writes concealment proved. Whether proved or not, but he used to write that. So applications never got admitted. Few except few. Then 91, when we had all those schemes that Manmohan Singh brought in with the economy opening up, 3 schemes were there, all those foreign exchange scheme and all that. There was one more amendment that was made, and that is settlement commission provision. Commissioner's veto was taken away. So we had maximum good cases happening in settlement commission from 91 to 2007. 2007, the legislature felt that we don't need it, so they narrowed down the definition of case so narrow. They never expected a few cases will be filed, but a few were filed. Then again 2007, 2010 they realized no, let us widen it. So again search cases are allowed from 2010. We have now 14 October. They are saying that even 148 cases, even set aside cases, is a very peculiar sort of thing when you look at the exact provision. So now again widened, as few people have already tell me that settlement commission will become a forum. Well, there is benefits, yes, but if you look at the benefits to the SSC, then to the what are the limitations. Limitations are very crucially important for anybody to know. What are the benefits? If a client comes to me, I'll share very honestly with you. If a client comes to me saying that, sir, this is my problem, I want to go to settlement, he evaluate the case, we just don't file it because he says so, and then decide how good or bad is the case on prosecution and penalty. If the case is such that prosecution will happen, if the case is such penalty is surely going to be confirmed, then we say, okay, this is an option you should consider. Because settlement commission, the first and the foremost, rather the only benefit, real benefit that an SSC has is immunity from penalty and prosecution. We'll go to the conditions little later. So this is one of the first conditions we look at when we advise a client whether to go for settlement. That is, what are the chances of penalty and prosecution in his case, and in-house assessment. The second benefit, though this is not true, at least very recently in Bombay again, but we can take the law as it stands, finality of order. From the moment you file an application till 18 months is the maximum time you get an order, that is final. There is no further appeal to that. If you comply with the terms of that order, that's an end of the matter as far as your assessment, your penalty, your interest, your prosecution is concerned, and recovery also, because they also provide how I am going to pay the tax. So single order for all the years, and if there are many times it happens 20 SSCs in a group, so we are looking at 20 assessments, 20 into 7, 140 penalties, and we have one order dealing with all these 280 issues. Single order within an 18-month period. This is possible, it happens, quite a few it has happened, no doubt. So finality is also a second condition. Multiplicity of proceedings will not happen. So that's, then there is an exclusive jurisdiction. The moment you file an application, the assessing officer loses jurisdiction over the case. The moment an application is filed, you have to give an intimation to him, he loses jurisdiction. This is also very important. Many times people find it a very important benefit that is there, and that is the whole jurisdiction shifts to the settlement commission. It is town-bound, as I mentioned. The proceedings are confidential. Even from the departmental side, if somebody comes up, say some commissioner or officer who is not handling the case of that particular SSC, he will need a special permission for to be remain present in the courtroom. Otherwise, they don't allow anybody. They literally clear out. The bench clerk first only finds out who are the people there. From the SSC side, everybody is authorized to be present. From the department side also. It's a purely confidential proceedings. Very rarely we find anything goes out. It just remains within the four doors, four walls of the settlement commission. What are the limitations? The first and foremost limitation, SSC can make it, and it's a one-way street. And mind you, out of 100 cases that goes, 2 cases realize that we should not have come, and they cannot get out. It's a one-way street. Having made an application, you cannot withdraw it. What can happen is, you may be thrown out, they may reject your application on the ground that it is invalid, but you cannot say, sir, I am sorry I came, I am going out. No. By having filed an application, it is either consequences, you will be thrown out by the commission because the conditions are not satisfied, or, and which has happened very recently in a case where they made the addition which SSC was not happy with, they made an addition which even the department had not reported. The department had not raised the issue that the share capital of this company is bogus. The settlement commission started the inquiry. The SSC said, sir, please, but nobody is saying it. They said, sorry. They said then, okay, sir, if I have not made a full and true disclosure, throw me out. They said, sorry, we are going to add it, we are going to levy penalty. They went to High Court. High Court said they have discretion to do either throw you out on the ground that you have not made a full and true disclosure, or they can make an additional levy penalty. And remember now, orders are final, you cannot appeal. So what happens is, what is good can also turn into bad. So very clearly the SSC should be aware of that it's a one-way street. You cannot exit this street at your choice, you can enter it at your choice. The most important condition, SSC has to make a full and true disclosure. Let us discuss this really, because this is what is the heart, this is the core of a settlement application. full and true disclosure is the primary condition, the sole condition for a valid application. If you have a full and true disclosure and manner of earning that income, your application is valid and you will get all the benefits. If it is not, then either of the thing, your application may be rejected or you may be facing penalty. So what is full and true disclosure means? It's something which really many times we have to tell our clients it is their responsibility. Let me tell you very frankly, my experience when cases come to me, they come always through the chartered accountant who have been handling that case for 20 years. And after consistent questioning that I do, because full and true disclosure is so important now, the client reveals some facts even the chartered accountant is not aware of. So full and true disclosure of income, full and true disclosure of facts when I am mentioning here, because I am talking to professionals, don't believe full and true disclosure as you know it. Full and true disclosure as your client knows it. There's a very crucial difference. With experience I have gained it, bad experience, good experience, but yes, with experience I gained it. The difference between what you know and what your client knows can be sometimes very huge. You may be aware of only 10%, you may not be aware of at all. Many times the clients have come and said, sir, we never knew this was happening. We are auditing in the books for 20 years and we don't know this is happening. So full and true disclosure is meant by the SSC coming up saying that yes, this is where I have evaded taxes. This is where evasion of taxes again is two concepts. One, evasion of taxes as we were looking at, where you have taken away money home, built up assets. And second, evasion of taxes, which is a technical definition of evasion of taxes. That is, you have booked expenses, you have booked receipts, which are liable to be disallowed. Like, say for example, you had to incur certain expenses and therefore in the books, how do you bring those expenses? You are not going to get that minister sign a voucher that okay, this is X crore of rupees, 48.3, all those will apply. So you get bills for those expenses. As per income tax department, this is also tax evasion. So from the client, what is expected that you will know, he will make a which helps you in drafting an application is a complete facts about how he has done business, both about evasion as well as about fudging of his books, what we call as creative accounting, or you can say that expenses have been booked or sales have been suppressed or sometimes sales have been overbooked also, as we had that classic case of Satyam. So it's all a possibility. Full and true disclosure would mean for the SSC that he has disclosed everything. Having disclosed those facts, then you can make a fair assessment of your income. There are two different things. Facts will be, okay, this is what I have done, these are the quantums, and then you try to determine the income from those quantums. So two separate things, make complete disclosure of facts and also make a fair assessment of your income. It should not be something which is a piddle sum, it has to be some reasonable amount of income and estimate that has to be made. The effort that goes into making a settlement application is primarily only relating to this, and that is full and true disclosure. Then you also have to disclose how did you earn it. You must have read in newspapers recently case of a very big corporate rejected in settlement commission. Some 50 crores or 25 crores was found in office and the employee said, this is my money, he filed an application, rejected. Now why rejected? Settlement commission felt that you are saying 25 crores is my income, very good. No, but where did you earn that 25 crores? So merely offering 25 crores is not sufficient. You also have to have a believability about how you earned it. They rejected the application on that ground, that manner of earning is not there. There is another Gujarat High Court decision also on this ground, where directors had offered income which was really earned by the company. They didn't want the company public limited to go through the rigmarole. Gujarat High Court said yes, the application has been rightly rejected because the directors had no source to earn such income. They have not disclosed the manner of earning such income. So manner of earning is also equally important. You cannot just say, okay, there is a problem found, let us offer it in some person and finish it. No, it has to be the person who has earned it. Otherwise, application may be rejected. So manner of earning is also as important. As I said, while deciding full and true disclosure, you have to forget the first session that you had today, what are the rules of evidence. Evidence per se, the truth per se doesn't require any evidence. What settlement commission or the department requires to reject an application is only an absence of trust in what the SSC says. So full and true disclosure, while making that, many times it happens, I get little irritated with chartered accountant, many times the chartered accountant get irritated with me. Sir, what are you talking? We strictly say that when you are discussing settlement case, for